Hello, welcome everybody to the Real Estate Insight Show, brought to you by the East Alabama Board of Realtors and sponsored by Alabama Professional Services. Today we're going to talk about first-time home buyers, the steps it takes to buy a home, and some of the issues or pitfalls that might present themselves during the process. Joining us today is Reynolds Bickerstaff, Randy Jinks, and Roger House. And Reynolds, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and your real estate background.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm Reynolds Bickerstaff. I'm the CEO at Bickerstaff Parham Real Estate, and we serve the Columbus, Georgia market and the Phoenix City market. And I've been a broker with them, since 2011. You can see the gray hairs on my beard, how long it's been. And we remember both boards in Columbus and Phoenix City, and just love this community and the market that we serve.
Well, great. And Randy, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Alabama Professional Services.
So, I'm Randy Jinks. I'm the marketing director for APS, Alabama Professional Service. We service the whole state of Alabama, from your foundation waterproofing repair problems to landscaping to pest control and to gutters on top of your house. So.
All right. Roger, introduce yourself and tell us what you do with APS.
I'm Roger House. I am the Vice President of Sales and Operation. To add to what Randy was saying, we're a 44-year-old company, family owned and operated. We're on the third generation of the company, with the fourth generation starting to work for us.
All right, great, thanks. And with that, we'll dive right into first-time home buyers with Reynolds. Reynolds, to start with, let's say I'm a first-time home buyer, really don't know anything about it. Like when I first bought my home, I knew nothing.
Sure.
What would be I guess first of all, what would be the first step outside of trying to get somebody like a realtor or an agent to help you? Walk us through what happens first if somebody's just sitting there thinking it's the right time to buy.
Sure. No, it's been really interesting, Chris, because we talk to a lot of buyers and our agents, and then also do a lot of research. And what typically happens is called flow. You think you want to buy a new car, and you start thinking about a Subaru, and all of a sudden you see Subarus everywhere, right? It's all you can think about. Well, people are out with friends, or they're thinking about a house. They hear Randy just bought a house. So then they go home and they start talking about, they get on Zillow or another website, and they're not really interested. They just start looking. So then, because they're looking, they start thinking about it. Now, when they're driving around, they start noticing all these for sale signs that, like they magically popped up overnight. They've been there for, weeks, months. And then they may even go in an open house, or they may call the number on the sign, and not even knowing that this is the right time or not. Now they're in this process, and they just kind of stumble into it. I think that's the biggest role technology's played, is it allows you to engage in a process even when you really shouldn't be. So when that happens, if they meet a good agent, and if they even remember who their agent was they worked with in the past, but you're asking about first-time home buyers, so they've never worked with anyone. So they don't know that they should be meeting with an agent first to understand the current market conditions, to explain what's happening. Because right now, I compare this a little bit to when I first started in '04, where homes are selling very quickly, but you still had some time to think about it. The way homes are selling now, you have a couple of hours maybe. So they need to meet with an agent and understand what the current market conditions, because it's kind of like jumping in a mosh pit. If you're not ready for that, you're gonna get kicked out real quickly. So meet with an agent, understand the current market conditions, and that agent will then direct you to a lender to understand what the current mortgage rates, what you can afford, and then hopefully they'll help you find the home that you're looking for and explain the process of what happens. Because when you do make that first offer, what a lot of first-time home buyers are frustrated about is they're missing out. They're making 4 or 5 offers, losing offers, until they finally make a winning offer, because the process was not explained to them correctly. So they want to experiment. And that's tough for agents because it requires you to be the professional and sit down and have a real talk with them about what's realistic. We can't offer that. This house isn't going to last more than a day on the market. So hopefully they get under contract, and then that agent will help them get set up with a professional inspector and understand what needs to be done with the home. Are there any concerns? And then during that process too, I'm sure that's when they would meet someone from APS to get an estimate or a quote on how to improve the property if there has been some deferred maintenance, or maybe there's some unintentional neglect, or maybe there's even a requirement from the appraiser that the lender sends out that says these things have to be done. So we call it the buyer income chain, right? There's a chain, and each link is a step. And if you skip some of those links in the chain, it's not going to be a smooth transaction. And you have to have vetted partners, vendors at each of those steps so that you make it to the next link. I know I was a first-time home buyer. It's one of the reasons I got into real estate, is I felt like I did all the work myself. She didn't explain the process to me. And that's what we're telling our agents to do now is, before you go run out and meet with someone, sit them down in your office, and you need to tell them what's happening and how this works. And then explain how you work with them. Because they need to find the right agent to help them work through this process. And sometimes that's not that agent that they're speaking with, especially if they just called someone off a yard sign. So it's real interesting. We're having to do everything on the front end, whereas in years past, you might have been able to explain some of these steps as they occurred or came up. But you're going directly from look at home, make an offer, to contract to close. There's not, hey, let's go out and look at homes for a couple weekends. You don't have that luxury anymore.
Right.
It's a really strange market.
Yeah. Something you brought up, I think is important, and it's important also. A recent poll from NAR, the National Association of Realtors, said that 80% of home buyers, not just new home buyers, first-time home buyers, the figure is higher, but 80% want to work with a licensed agent. And something else that's important, being with the Board of Realtors, is to make sure that agent is a realtor.
Yes.
Realtors are held to a higher standard and don't only have to meet real estate law, but they have to meet a higher ethical standard than an agent that is not a realtor. Which leads me into the next thing. One of the things you said is that first-time home buyer may be looking at all the, technology is definitely changing things.
Yeah, it is.
But they're looking at a lot of the internet sites, and they may not be getting the most up-to-date information because things in the market are happening quicker than the technology can keep up with.
That's right.
So, and you can speak to this a little bit, but the most important part of it is to get, in today's market, is to get the most up-to-date information, and that source is from the local MLS and from the local agent. Is that correct?
That's correct. On the sales market and the rental market, because the MLS is the source of all that information, and working with a realtor is so important, just because of I think in any industry, when you're in a good economy, that also attracts folks to enter that market just because it's a good economy. And so you want to make sure you're working with someone that's held to professional standards, whether it's a realtor, a home inspector, a lender, a builder. A good economy always attracts a lot of folks. When you start seeing people that are now doing things that in previous years were not, that's even more of an indication you need to seek out the professional.
Right.
And you're right, with technology, everything's right here on our phone.
Right.
And doesn't mean that accessibility equates to accuracy.
Right. And again, the most up-to-date information is going to come from a local realtor that is involved in the local MLS, because the stuff on your phone, it might not be the most up-to-date information. It may be yesterday's information.
That's right.
Sounds like new information, but it's not today's information.
No, you're correct. And the new MLS software that y'all have deployed at the board is lightning fast, up to date, and it has such a great user experience for our clients, buyers, that there's no need for them to use a third-party site like Zillow or Realtor.com in this market, because it creates such a great user experience for them, and it's updated instantly.
And with all that, so we've got down, probably the first step would be, seek out a realtor, a licensed agent, professional, to help walk you through the process, especially important with a first-time home buyer. After that meeting, or even before the meeting, they might have identified a few properties. How important is just flat-out curb appeal, and especially with a new first-time home buyer?
Sure. It's interesting, you were talking about NAR, the home buyer seller report, and another stat in there focuses on how long a first-time home buyer lived in their first home. And I was shocked it was less than 5 years. And because what happened is they weren't focusing on the long-term implications of buying a house. It was because they were too small and their family started growing, right? And so what we're encouraging them to look at now is 3 different priorities. It's a dedicated home office, not a 4th bedroom with a Murphy bed or a day bed, but a home office, like you go in there and it's like you're in your office down the street. A great outdoor space, that's so incredibly important. And then you've got to have high-speed internet, at least 100 meg, not DSL or satellite, but I've already done 3 parent-teacher Zoom meetings today on Friday. Luckily, I went back to my office, but I could have done from my phone, but not at home if my kids are watching Netflix and something else, and spouse is on the computer. So it's really shifted, and we've noticed that people are thinking more long-term, that if this is what it's going to be like, maybe that open kitchen isn't as important as the 3 things that I mentioned. You got 2 adults, 2 or 3 kids, Zooming from home, and then you just turn around and you live there too. We've never spent this much time in our house ever before. We never thought we would. So it's really shifted our priority on, if I'm going to be living in this home, what does it have to have for me to be happy?
So with those those 3, I guess, priorities that are sort of emerging and changing every day, if a first-time home buyer finds a house and just that it meets those criteria, and might have some cosmetic issues, or even structural, but sort of minor type stuff, that's part of what APS does, is a lot of things that seem major to a first-time home buyer.
Yeah.
What could some of those issues be? Even if it's like just flat out the bushes in the yard, or
oh gosh, sometimes it's just a paint color, right? I mean, you got to think about it. When you've been in the business a certain number of years or owned a home, you kind of forget what it's like to be in that mindset. And that's why a lot of folks are spending money getting their home perfectly move-in ready, because a lot of first-time home buyers, and I'm speaking in generalizations, they can't visualize beyond that. So they see something small, like maybe one side's missing some gutters, or the roof looks like it's only got 5 years left on it. And then I don't know anyone that owns a home that actively crawls under their house in the crawl space. That's why we need to hire y'all to do that, or we do a termite inspection. But most first-time home buyers don't know how to do things that the generations before them had to do. Whereas, I know when my parents spent the weekends painting the trim on the house, right? So homes have, they appear to have more maintenance to a first-time home buyer than maybe someone that's on their second or third home. And I think it's really important during that due diligence period. That's one of the stages after you get an offer accepted. You have a period of due diligence where you can do inspections and bring professionals by. I think it's important that the real estate agent partner with the right professionals to give their client comfort knowing this is or isn't a major issue, because a lot of things can be misinterpreted depending on how that information is presented. I know you don't necessarily want to hand a first-time home buyer a 65-page inspection report.
Right.
That they won't get to page 22.
Right.
So I put that on the real estate professional as their duty, because if they don't educate the inspector or any of the other vendors they're bringing by on what the concerns of their clients actually are, then they're not going to be able to deliver the information in a way that they can easily understand and digest that. Because it's scary. You got to think about this. We've seen an increase in terminated contracts because people get under contract and think, oh my gosh, is this the right house? Oh my, it's got a piece of rotten wood, or it needs a new toilet. And just, minor stuff. But the professional's got to set them up for that and explain, once we get under a contract, these things are going to happen, and I'll bring in the right people to help you get comfortable with the future cost of owning this home.
Yeah. Roger, he brought up a great point. Once you get to the inspection stage, and let's just say Reynolds or one of his agents gets that 65-page report, what are some of the things that pop up in your experience in some of those reports that a first-time home buyer, it would just freak them out and they would think about just canceling a deal? Because that's a lot of the stuff might be easily, there might be an easy remedy for it. What are some of the things you see that could really kill a deal and cause a first-time home buyer not to be able to have that satisfaction of home ownership?
The biggest one is moisture in the crawl space. I don't know why that is, but it scares everybody away from a home, and that's not a bad problem. It can be corrected real easily. That shouldn't scare nobody away. The next one is cracks in their foundation. If they see a crack, they think the house is fixing to fall apart. But it's not. It can be corrected also. I mean, you put piers on it or something like that and jack the house back up, you don't have a problem no more. It's got a lifetime warranty with it, so you got a lifetime of fun at your new home.
And as Reynolds alluded to, things are happening so fast right now. And some of the deals are contingent, correct me if I'm wrong, on a possible early, a short closing period. How fast can you address some of these issues, like a crack in the foundation where you're going to do piers, or crawl space, mitigating the moisture in there? How fast of a turnaround from the time a Reynolds calls you until y'all show up and correct the issue?
The inspection will be done within 24 hours. Within 4 days, we'll have the work done. If it's depending on the closing, we're going to make sure that happens
That's
first.
fast.
Okay?
So that would be plenty of time for a first-time home buyer, and to sort of comfort them into knowing that it's not a 3 or 4 week fix. I would think that the short amount of time that it could be inspected and addressed would comfort them as well.
Absolutely. And when working with a professional, they can tell you whether this is an issue. Is it just a crack in a brick skirt around the crawl space, or is it actually part of the foundation? And I think there's a lot of folks that, unless you've been in the business and unless you crawl under homes for a living, which I do not, you wouldn't know these things are more than just a cosmetic concern. So.
And one good thing that APS does, we actually have a real estate division in our company. We're the only foundation company in the state of Alabama that has a real estate division.
And what do they do?
Okay. A great example would say you're looking at a house and you need a termite contract. So you can't sell the house because there's no, it hasn't been inspected. So you could call our real estate division and say, hey, we have a house right here in Phoenix City on Elm Street. Can you get one of your guys out there? And so one of our guys will go out there, not only do we do the inspection, but when they send it back to the ladies in the office, they send it straight to the closing attorney.
Okay.
So your agents don't even have to mess
Wow.
with it. It goes straight there. And Roger, correct me if I'm wrong, if there is some foundation damage or waterproofing or does, we can actually work that up in there so it gets put into the loan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we do all the paperwork.
So I know some of that work
so
can be,
Yeah.
a little more expensive than a new water heater or
Yes.
air conditioner.
Not much more. I mean, it depends on what all.
It depends on size of the
That's
house
right.
and the scope of the work. I
Correct.
get it. I didn't know you could do that. You could
Yeah.
add it into, depending on the situation.
Correct.
That's a great option.
And we do everything with the termite contracts, otherwise known as termite bonds.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, we do all the paperwork and everything. So, the agent doesn't have to worry about it. And the homeowner, we cover the whole state. I can't tell you, it's just amazing in this pandemic how homes are just selling and selling.
Sure.
And we're doing so many termite inspections, because you need it for the closing and all. And we try.
Are they having this quarantine too, the termites? Are they getting out?
24/7, 7 days a week.
yeah, they're out there.
They're always there.
Yeah.
But and we have a lot of the home buyers that call us, and they'll say, "Hey, do you have my termite bond? My termite bond?" And we'll say, "Yeah, but we're not sending it to you yet. It's going straight. We send
Okay.
it straight to the closing attorney. Because they don't own the house yet.
Right.
So so that's who where we're sending it to their closing attorney or to whoever the agent
Sure.
tells us to."
It's interesting you talk about moisture. We're in the South, and where we are right now is in a valley along a river. Moisture is prevalent, and you're right. It's not a bad thing. It's just it needs to be properly and professionally addressed.
Correct.
What-
Controlled.
yes.
You can control moisture.
And a lot of homes were designed to do that naturally. And I
Correct.
think that's a challenge too now is a lot of these homes, you're trying to block out natural elements in your environment, and that also creates challenges too.
Yes.
Um,
Well, we can encapsulate crawl spaces.
Yeah.
I mean, people say, well, let's put more vents in. No, that's not the answer no more. Let's encapsulate it, control the moisture in there, control the humidity, and you got a perfectly good home. In fact, you can live down there if you wanted to.
we did that at my house. I had a big crawl space out in the country and kept having some moisture issues because we're right by a lake. And I couldn't tell you how much the air quality improved almost, I won't say instantly, but within several days.
Yes.
Because we had 2 air handlers in the crawl space as well. So it's amazing. I wasn't skeptical, but there's just so many elements that come into play in a real estate transaction. If you don't have the right people involved, you could be at risk of making a bad decision.
Correct. You're exactly right. And a lot of people do that.
And some people are comfortable making bad decisions on their own without the help of professionals. And they have the right to do that too.
That's right.
I just prefer they at least get some advice, whether they want to hire an agent or someone like y'all before.
Yes.
Well, that's great information, guys. At this point, we'll take a break, and please join us after the break, and we'll continue with our first-time homebuyer segment. Thank you.
Your home. It holds your future and their future too. So when you notice doors that don't quite close right, or find water in your basement, trust the shield at APS Foundation. Protection for your home.
Your home, it's the center of your life, where your family lives and plays and loves. At Alabama Professional Services, we know that happy homes help build happy families. That's why every APS tech formulates a plan that's right for your home and your family. From products that are human and pet friendly to a monthly or quarterly treatment schedule, we ensure that the inside and outside of your home are safe and free of pests. Alabama Professional Services, protection for your home.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Real Estate Insight Show. I'm your host, Chris Lammons with the East Alabama Board of Realtors, and we're here with APS, Roger and Randy, and they normally have a segment that's called Ask Roger, but we're going to switch it up a little bit and have the APS guys ask Reynolds. So, do you have any questions for Rick?
I actually do. I know when I bought my first house, I was worried about, who am I going to be paying? Am I going to be paying some big bank in New York, in Chicago, or some mortgage firm I see advertising on television? Or how do you go about helping a first-time buyer decide who to use for their mortgage?
No, that's a great question. As we were talking earlier about working with the right professionals, we always recommend first-time home buyers meet with a local loan officer first, because this is an important decision. Even with rates, they're the lowest they have ever been in recorded history. They're below 3%. Even with rates that low, you don't want to make a poor financial decision. So we recommend all first-time home buyers meet with a local lender. If they're comfortable meeting face-to-face, there's plenty of room to spread out, but they need someone to help explain what someone like them should do in a market like this, because this market is very fast-paced, and some sellers may not accept a certain type of loan because of the condition of their home. Like a VA loan and FHA loan have stricter guidelines on conditions that have to be met. So sometimes purchasing an older home is a little more challenging with those loans because they may scrutinize the age of the roof, paint if it's a wood siding house. In our market, the VA and FHA loans are predominantly the ones new first-time home buyers use because of the demographics in this community. So it's always important to have a local lender sit down and say, what should someone like you do in a situation like this? You've got your VA, you could go conventional, and lay out not how much house you can afford, but what do you want your monthly payment to be? That's the most important thing. Rates change. We know homeowners insurance probably will gradually increase each year. So a fluctuation in the rate change can either reduce your total purchase price or increase the amount you can purchase. And right now, I don't know how you could afford more house with rates where they are. That doesn't mean you should discount the importance of meeting with a professional to help guide you through that process. Because the statistics show that most people buying a home today are staying in it for 10 to 15 years. That's a big commitment.
Yes.
I've never lived in a home that long, but in my adult life, when I was growing up, I didn't have a choice. I had to live with my parents. The most I've ever lived in a home is 10. So that's a big commitment. And if you pick the right loan, if you think about it, 15 years, you can have it paid off, or the majority of it paid off. And that's some serious wealth that you've generated. So I can't overstress, it's a great question, but I can't overstress how important it is to look at the right loan given the market conditions and your future plans for you and your family.
Something else, when you're talking about loans and rates and all that, somebody that has never owned a home may be renting in an apartment or these days living with the parents.
Sure.
With the rates as low as they are, I want to let everybody out there know that maybe on the fence that's never bought a home before, you can, in a lot of cases, pay less for a mortgage and be building that wealth than renting, correct?
Absolutely. If I was a first-time home buyer right now and I bumped into myself, the real estate professional, I would tell myself, buy a home that you're not going to live in forever. Buy a home that's going to eventually be your rental property. Because rates are so low, you're right, Chris, buying a home, I would argue, still is more affordable than renting, because we know that the average rental rates are increasing each year. Buy a home that's not going to be your forever home, but your first-time home buyer. Typically, they're under the age of 35, just starting a family, so that home's not going to be your forever home. Acknowledge that. Maybe buy slightly less than what you would so you can build some serious equity and eventually rent that out later. And then use that to buy your second home, which is where most people spend the majority of that's where your children grow up, right? I wish I had done that. I tell people all the time, another option with rates being this low is when your first child is born, go out and try to buy a small investment property and put it on a 15-year fixed mortgage. If the numbers work, that will pay for their college education when they graduate high school. Be paid off in 15 years. So it gets me so excited that rates are this low because it creates so many opportunities for folks not to maximize their borrowing power on one unit, but how can you spread that out over maybe 2 units? That's how you really take advantage of a market like this. If you can find properties to purchase.
Right.
That is the challenge.
And you could even purchase a property that needs some work and attention that APS could help with.
Absolutely.
We mentioned curb appeal earlier in the show. Concrete repairs. Y'all can do, for the first-time home buyer that can only afford to get in sort of a fixer-upper, go through again what all services that y'all would offer to help that first-time home buyer either turn it around to a rental or flip it and move into a nicer home and build that wealth.
Well, I mean, like I said earlier, if they're having a problem with cracks in the foundation and stuff like that, we can put supports, piers, whatever it needs in it to put that thing structurally sound. Also, we can do something called polyleveling. If they're having concrete issues around their driveway, sidewalks, pool decks, we pump this foam underneath this concrete, lift it back up
I've seen that.
to
That's
level,
really cool.
and it's perfectly safe. And I like that. The EPA even says this is the safest product out there to go against the ground. So, I mean, it's good for your concrete and your ground.
So a lot of things that wouldn't necessarily kill a deal, but could cause them to make some more money or make money off of the deal outside of the equity that they're building in the home ownership. Also, bushes, yard.
Yes.
If it's sort of a, I don't want to use the word, but I will, sort of run down vegetation, overgrowth, and all that. Do y'all address that type of stuff?
Yes, we do. We can go out there and redesign a whole lawn if we need to. And if the lawn's just wore out a little bit, a lot of times you can use the right fertilizers, the right herbicides, and get that lawn back to mint condition. Just because it looks run down don't mean it is.
Yeah.
We can fix that lawn.
It may just be dormant a little bit.
Correct.
Yeah.
Might
Interesting.
need just a little food for thought, okay?
Yeah.
Grow that lawn again.
Well, that's some great information. I want to thank Reynolds Bickerstaff.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
And Randy Jinks and Roger House from Alabama Professional Services. Again, this is brought to you by the East Alabama Board of Realtors, the voice of real estate in this community. And Alabama Professional Services is the sponsor, and we want to thank our broker guest today, Reynolds Bickerstaff.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.